Well, welcome to Hiring for Good. I am Suzanne Hanifin with Acumen Executive Search. And once again, I'm with my lovely co-host, Tanis Morris.
Hello, Suzanne.
Hello, Tanis. And we are super excited. You like that enthusiasm? Super excited to have Valdez Bravo join us today. We have been doing Hiring for Good for almost 2 years, a little longer. And for 2 years, I've been saying I want Valdez on our podcast. So Valdez is a lifelong public servant with over 25 years of healthcare industry. And he serves today as the Deputy Director of Operations at Multnomah County Health Department. Valdez is truly a healthcare expert and passionate about it. So I'm going to read this, but before I do, I just wanted to say welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So Valdez is a native Oregonian, and he got his healthcare start when he enlisted at the Army at age 18. After an honorable discharge 8 years later, he came back to Oregon, and he ended up going to work with the VA for the next 18 years, primarily serving in positions of increasing responsibility at the VA Portland healthcare system, and where he served as an associate director or chief operating officer in the VA Southern Oregon Rehab Center and clinics in White City, Oregon. In addition to serving his fellow veterans, Valdez is a former elected board of trustee at Portland Community College, Zone 5, and has worked with a number of national and local organizations such as Portland Youth Builders, Portland Humanities, and Valdez serves as president of the Oregon Biomedical Association from 2012 to 2013, and currently serves as the immediate past president of the Oregon Chamber of ACHE. In 2022, Valdez joined the leadership team of Multnomah County Health Department as the deputy director, and he oversaw HR, organizational development, quality, data analytics, policy, and emergency management functions, which is such a hard time right after COVID. And hopefully we'll chat about that a little bit. But Valdez is inspired every day by his wife and daughter and has a family they enjoyed political activism, exploring the arts, trying out vegan foodie hotspots, traveling around Oregon, and attempting to keep up with two long-haired chihuahuas named Archie and Pepper. So welcome, Valdez. And, I know I kind of did a very high level of your journey, but why don't you kind of dive in and really kind of talk about how you ended up, again, age 18, going into the military, and now with your current position at Multnomah County?
Well, I didn't plan on being in healthcare when I was a kid. I mean, I don't know that a lot of kids grow up saying, I want to be a healthcare administrator.
Yeah.
But what happened with me, in my case, was I grew up in a family that was very loving, very supportive. It was my mom, a single mom, and my grandma, and a whole tassel of cousins. And we all grew up on a little kind of hobby farm outside of Salem, just outside of city limits. And it wasn't a big, not only were we not a big college family, there was a lot of things like, alcoholism, addiction, incarceration, heroin use, a lot of things in my childhood that what I years later would learn to be are called adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. When you look at those scores, I mean, I can count up 5 or 6 of them, in my childhood. But because I think I grew up with such love and support from my grandma and my mom, it seemed like a very idyllic childhood, despite all that.
Wow.
To me. And then, name of the game growing up was to be a good person, keep your nose clean, stay out of trouble, and try to lead a happy life and learn a vocation or a trade. My one uncle was a plumber. My other uncle was a roofer. And my mom had been on welfare for a hot minute, but was able to get a job part-time doing bookkeeping at the welfare office and led to a 30-plus year career in state government. And
wow.
She retired and is now happily living somewhere on PERS 1, on that little hobby farm with her animals. But For me, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do, except I knew that I didn't want to be a burden on my mom. You know, when I didn't really have a plan, coming out of high school, I was one of those bright kids that was like a tag, type kid, but I had no work ethic, discipline. I was just like lived for the moment, would always forget to do my homework, whether consciously or not. And so I basically, when I got, it was summer between my junior and senior year, I got a call from a recruiter. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. Hello, is this Valdez Bravo? This is Staff Sergeant Daniel K. Smith with this man's Army. Are you ready to serve your country? And it was funny because my mom and I had just been talking about military as an option like a week or so before, because she had almost joined the Air Force at one point. She's like, had you ever thought about that? I'm like, no. So when I told the recruiter, it's funny, I was just talking about that with my mom. I think he knew right there that, So I ended up talking to the Army and decided to enlist. So I enlisted between my junior and senior year as a medical equipment repair technician. I figured it was a vocation that I'd be able to get a job anywhere where there was a hospital or people sick. There was going to be medical equipment that would need to be fixed and serviced. So it seemed like a very practical trade. It also is seemed like the best job on the list other than air traffic control, which especially these days, you can see, it's a very stressful position to be in. And I had seen those movies like Airplane growing up, and it seemed like there was like chain smoking and bumping into each other and spilling coffee. So I was like, okay, I'll do medical equipment repair. So I ended up joining the Army as a medical equipment repair technician. I was a 6-year enlistment because the school was very long and they had a very low retention rate because everyone would just turn around, get out, and go get a job. So it was 6 years, but I ended up liking it, and I was having too much fun in Germany, so I re-enlisted and ended up doing 8 years. Now, had I gotten out, I would have gotten out. If I hadn't re-enlisted, I would have gotten out in June of 2001.
Oh, wow.
But I had re-enlisted for Fort Belvoir, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. So I ended up finding myself, in the national capital area during 9/11. That definitely impacted my life in the fact that a year later, a little over a year later, I was deployed to Afghanistan as part of the 2nd Combat Support Hospital in theater there, who had, the Army deployed with a CAT scan. I was one of the few people in the Army that had that CAT scan training.
Wow.
So went over to Bagram Air Force Base, and it was a short deployment, but an impactful one. Everyone came home safe from that deployment, so that's the good news. So I came home from the Army, got out, honorable discharge in August 2003. I went to work at OHSU for about 6 months, but then I heard about an opportunity at the Portland VA Medical Center. And they said, hey, you're a veteran, we're veterans, we're serving veterans, you should be over here with us, not at OHSU, even though they love OHSU. And so that ended up leading me to a career in the VA. I switched in 2004. I kind of knew that I didn't want to necessarily fix medical equipment the rest of my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I felt kind of guilty for having those conflicted feelings. And I learned later in grad school that the vocabulary for that, which is that I had job satisfaction, which is I was kind of working for the extrinsic benefits of pay, time off, those kind of things. My life started at 3:30 when I got off work, and it happened on the weekends. But the work itself didn't truly animate me, right? I didn't learn that was a job engagement. That was like years to come. So I started going back to school. I went to Portland Community College on the GI Bill because ostensibly when I joined the Army, that was one of the things is not only vocation but college money. I thrived, I'm getting straight A's at PCC. Actually, funny, the one B I got was in political science. So it's kind of funny that I'm so politically active these days. But anyway, but then and then I gravitated towards the humanities. And when I switched to PSU, I chose the English major because I had read that was the best way to get a well-rounded education. And I already had this really great job from the Army of fixing medical equipment, which was, like I said, paying pretty good money. I got to use my mind. I'm working indoors. I'm helping support patient care. It was a great job. But again, I felt like something was unsatisfied, unsettled there. So got my English degree, and then a funny thing happened. I was thinking about maybe joining the Foreign Service because I'm very mission-minded, and being in the Army is kind of like getting a tattoo. Like you get one, and then next thing you know, you want to get another one. And I have a number of them. But when I kind of got stir crazy because in the Army you move every 2 years, and I was like, the Foreign Service would be really exciting and a way to serve my country. I thought about pursuing a Master's in Fine Arts and writing the next great American novel, some little endeavor like that. But what happened was instead I got promoted to supervisor of my department. And when I got promoted to supervisor, all those old military habits that had been infused in me, those leadership lessons at a young age, came rushing back. And I stepped right back into it. When I started the VA, I was 26 or 27. The next youngest two people were 43, and it went up from there. Wow. So I was like the kid. Now, a year earlier in the Army, I was leading a department of civilians and soldiers, and kind of running stuff. And so I had felt very disempowered when I got to the VA. I remember asking questions like, hey, have we ever thought about doing like this? Or for inspections, what if we do this? And I got the remark, hey, kid, you can have an opinion when you've been here for 5 years. And this is like the opposite of, empowerment, of engagement with an employee, right? Just total shutdown. Makes me like, okay, I'm not going to put anything into work. Again, life starts when the buzzer rings. So anyway, so I had the opposite mindset. And so I asked all the staff, I was going from being one of the team to the supervisor, and then also like a month later, my boss left. So I was wearing both hats.
Wow.
A month into the job, I'm the manager and the supervisor. And I said, hey, team, like, let's change things the way we've always been wanting it for, all these years. Like, I'm in charge. Like, what do we want to do here? And so we made all kinds of changes to our workflow process, to how we assigned work, to our parts, to our, everything that we did. And they were happy. We were at a deficit because there was a hiring lag in the federal government to account for increased social workers that were hiring because of the suicide crisis. And so biomed techs weren't getting authorized for backfill. So we were down staff, but our performance actually went up, and we actually got recognized in 24/7 magazine. Our trade mag is one of the best departments of the year that year.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So at that point, my wife said, I know you've been talking about foreign service and a master's in fine arts, but like it seems like leadership and management is really your thing. Is there some kind of degree you could do? And so I basically found about this program where the VA would send you to get your master's in healthcare administration and MBA with the Army Baylor program, which is a partnership where Baylor partners with the Army to train the next generation of federal leaders. I was the VA guy that got to go that year. I came home, and then I got a chance to spend a year in the executive office doing projects and getting mentorship from our facility director or CEO. Then I had a chance to stand up our lean process improvement program as we were kicking off that journey, earning my black belt, hiring others. They all got their black belt, still going strong today, doing Kaizen events and driving waste out of the government processes up there at the VA. Then I did a lateral move so I could get some clinical experience, and I was primary care director for 2.5 years, a bit before COVID and a bit after. So I had both experiences of, pre-COVID normalcy and then post-COVID. I was really excited that, we were able to take our virtual visits from 8 visits in 2019 to over 8,000 in 2020 as a necessity. And then I made that jump to going down to Southern Oregon and serving as the associate director at the VA Southern Oregon Rehab Center and Clinics.
Wow.
And then I was only able to do that because of COVID, because my wife was portable online. She teaches at Portland State. My daughter was, online school. But once they had to go back to in person, I'm down in Southern Oregon doing this trip back and forth to Lake Oswego every week. And so it was around that time that Molly Norton from Acumen Search found me on LinkedIn and said, would you ever be interested in leaving the VA and coming to Multnomah County, and you've got the exact right set of skills that we're looking for in this new deputy director of operations position. And if you aren't interested, do you have an exact clone? So all that kind of resonated with me and was like, oh, I must be a good fit. So that's what led me to applying to serve as healthcare administrator at Multnomah County.
And before I kind of jump in, I do want to take a little step back, and that's military.
Yeah.
So I think I shared with you, my husband was military and was a JAG officer. And I tell you, it's amazing 20 years later, 30 years later, he always talks about those lessons that are so, and I don't want to say inbred into the Army, but
Ingrained.
Those ingrained.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those core, that core. And how amazing the educational opportunities, the way that they push people that want to be leaders and help them become leaders. I think the Army, at least in some circles, kind of have a bad rep. And I think it's been, at least in our perspective, has been incredible. And it sounds like your military journey, too, was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of, people that join the military for different reasons, that have different military experiences and get out. I felt very lucky that I had just nothing but positive experiences in the Army. But the thing about the military, whether it's the Army or any of the other branches, even though I think the Army is the best, is that they start training you on leadership from day one.
Yeah.
From day one, like you're at reception battalion. You haven't really started basic training yet. They'll say, you, go out there and, pick up trash in the field in front of, because they just keep you busy. And they'll determine who graduated first or Does anyone here have military or law enforcement experience? Somebody will raise their hand. All right, you're in charge because you're policing the area, which is like, it's like a word for like cleaning it up. And so they from day one, whether you're picking up trash, somebody's in charge of picking up that trash, right? But it just goes from there. They basically are, you're always a soldier first, and then whatever your occupation, your military occupation is second. They develop you for those leadership positions as you advance from like private to private E2, private first class, specialist, and then ultimately sergeant, which is what the rank I held when I got out, non-commissioned officer. But you don't just like pin those stripes. You got to earn them. You got to like amass all this education, all these points. You have to do so well at the range on your physical fitness. You have to study for a promotion board. That was my favorite part because I like trivia. So it's like, all these like trivia questions they throw at you. You have to maintain your military bearing and, exhibit all those. Your uniform has to be looking straight. But what I really loved about the military was that there was such structure. There is this if-then. If you do X, Y, and Z, it will result in these good things, which is like a kind of structure and system I didn't feel like I had growing up. So I think that's why I just thrived. It's like, okay, there's rules to the game. I'm able to understand them. They make sense. Now I just have to execute them and good things will happen. And I rose through the ranks pretty quick. I mean, I pinned sergeant like shortly after I turned 21, which was, kind of early for people in my occupation. But the other thing is they do ingrain these leadership lessons, whether it's the non-commissioned officer 11 principles. I mean, I quote one at work all the time, know of and make use of available resources. I mean, that's something that is so key to being a leader in any situation, whether you're at the front lines or at the C-suite level. Another key thing that we learned in our primary leadership development course, which was a course you have to take before you pin your stripes to be eligible for your stripes. I remember our platoon sergeant, our small group leader telling us like, take care of Joe, Joe will take care of you. And when he first said it, I thought it meant like, look, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, like let's look out for each other. But it was really more servant leadership. I had never heard those terms back then. I don't think I was hearing it commonly back then, but that's what it was. It was like, and I tell the staff at the county, like, you don't work for me, I work for you. I come to work every day to do two things: get barriers out of your way so you can do the job that you want to do, and get you the resources you need so you can do the job that you want to do. And sometimes the resources are hard things like staff or budget or space, but sometimes it's mentorship, a connection, a seat at the table, asking you what you think, getting you in the room, a communication, just updating you what the heck's going on. So there's all kinds of ways you can do that. But I learned all that from my very early days in the Army. Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. It kind of tees it up beautifully because our question really next is about formative experiences. So obviously being in the military was incredibly formative for you. Yeah. If you examine kind of your life as a leader, you've already spoken to some of what the Army brought to you. What other formative experiences did you undergo that really kind of honed your leadership skills or made you kind of grow as a leader or change the way you think about leadership?
I think the single biggest one outside of just like, on the job, leadership experiences and my, to include my Army time was in graduate school. Because, in my bachelor's, I was, I did an English major. You're kind of just studying a variety of topics, and there's not really a connected theme other than whatever your major is. In my case, it was English. But when I went to the Army Baylor program, that was the key thing that they pride themselves on is in creating the next generation, developing the next generation of federal sector healthcare leaders, whether it's at VA, Army, military treatment facilities, Indian Health Service, wherever. It's all about leadership. It was healthcare and healthcare systems, but all through that emphasis on leadership, undergirding every aspect of every class. Wow. Whether it was straight up a leadership class that we had or organizational behavior, or whether it was related to finance or budget or healthcare ethics. So that program, that combined with my professional society, I'm a firm believer that lifelong learning is the way to go. And for me, I've been involved with the American College of Healthcare Executives since 2013 when I got involved because I'd always seen like the FACHE, which is the credential that I possess, a board certified fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives. I'd always seen that on our like SES directors, our CEO signature blocks in the VA. But when I got to grad school, they really promoted getting involved with ACHE and as a learning organization. And the nice thing is that there's these 11 core competencies that Army Baylor has that are pretty much like a direct cross, cross-referenced with the executive competencies that ACHE has.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So ACHE, Army, Baylor, they're all promoting the same things about governance, about ethics, about business, about human resources, about healthcare systems, legal, all the gamut that it takes to be an effective healthcare leader. And so they just promoted that in and out. And then the other thing is, not only did they teach all those things, and we got just robust development in all those during that graduate school experience, but during that leadership class, they asked us to really create our own leadership philosophy. And I think this is something that maybe a lot of leaders maybe don't take time to do, or maybe they do it, but then they kind of move on. But I kind of keep that handy. So whenever I'm meeting a new team, whether it's at a new organization or I'm at an organization, but I'm meeting a new work unit, and they want to know what I'm all about or how I see the world or how I show up, it's nice to have a leadership philosophy that you can articulate. Like I kind of did it a little bit a second ago where I talked about I only come to do two things when I come to work is get barriers out of the way, get resources, that servant leadership mindset. But for me, it's like, I'm a punster. Anyone that knows me knows I'm into wordplay. And so mine was, at Baylor, the motto is sick 'em bears, right? Sick 'em bears.
Yeah.
So my acronym was SICM leadership. So it was like seek accountability in myself and hold others accountable for their actions, inspired others to act through empowering them, challenge the process using critical thinking, empower others to act, and model the way. So, easy for me to remember. I can rattle it off. And those are like truly authentic things that I hold dear as I try to show up every day to be a leader. But when you can know those things about yourself. I mean, those might not be the highest priority. People might not want people challenging their process with critical thinking. That's kind of a pain when it happens, but it's so important. But everyone should have their own. They should be able to articulate it, and they should take time to share that with their teams that they're aspiring to lead.
Well, and you have to know our questions because you just teed up the next one, which is really about...
Second time in a row.
I know.
Yes,
really about taking these core values that you bring and how do you operationalize them into your team. And whether it's SICM or... I love that. I'm going to remember that.
Well, it's funny. If you read the Leadership Challenge book by, who is it? Barry McKee and Richard Boyatz, I say. Their actual acronyms for that, their 5 it's MICES. So it was pretty easy for me to kind of move it around. But anyway, but no, the way I think, the key thing I think is, we always hear about authentic leadership. Like people want authentic leaders, I remember I had a leader when I was at White City, the director, David Holt, awesome guy, super nice guy, right? He would go out and we'd go out into go to the Gimba where the work happens, and we'd meet with teams and stuff. And he was like just, listening and empathetic and nice and supportive and positive. And I would get questions from my direct reports, like chief of facilities and stuff. Hey, what's he really like? What's he like when, behind closed doors? I'm like, same guy. He was very authentic, and I think that's important to be that authentic person. People know when you're like just showing up and turning on a good smile when you're out walking the lines, or you're in the staff meeting. But if you're some kind of tyrant or keeping people in the dark, normally people sense that. So for me, the key thing, and I got this from this book that I highly recommend to any leader, called Primal Leadership. Now, my wife hates the title because it sounds like caveman leadership or something. But the reason it's called Primal Leadership is, and it's by Daniel Goleman, who kind of came up with the whole notion of EQ and emotional intelligence. The whole point of it is that there's yes, traditionally we've had people with the most education or the most power, or those people those high IQ types. If a hospital was the senior doctor running things. Might not have the EQ to be effective, right? You've seen those types of people that have the IQ, but they don't have the EQ. And then, usually bad things happen. They're the people that, are moving on after 1 year at the organization and that kind of stuff. So what primal leadership is all about is leveraging your EQ in leadership. And he talks about one of the most singular important things. And I'll tell this quick story because it's the same thing. I was at the Army Baylor program, and we had this Colonel Hopkins Chadwick, and she came in, and there was this huge whiteboard wall all across this. It was a double classroom because there were so many of us, and this was 60 people in the class. And she said, "What do you think is the number one most important trait to being a good leader?" And the words started coming out, right? Courage, integrity, selflessness, communication, equity, all the different things one would say. And she was writing them down. We filled up that huge, big board, and not a single person got it. which at the very end, with all these wonderful words that we should all aspire to be, that we all know we should be, that, they show in movies of what a good leader is and at the classes and all that.
Wait, I'm curious. Do you have a guess?
Do you have a guess what it is?
I have a guess, maybe.
What's your guess?
My guess is generosity.
Okay, good guess.
I was going to say humility.
Those were both on the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the number one key characteristic is self-awareness. Because you could hold generosity as a value and not being a generous person. You could hold humility as a value. Think you're the most humble person in the world, and you're actually not acting in a way that does that. So only by being self-aware do you truly know how you're doing, whether it's related to how you communicate, how selfless you are, how empowering you are, how partnering, how participatory you are, how inclusionary you are. And if you are operating on your own little world here and everybody else is on a different world, that's not going to spell good things for you. And hopefully, they have 360 surveys, and they have some employee feedback surveys that come out and everything, where you can kind of suss some of this stuff out. But if you as a leader take it as a personal value to always be striving to be self-aware, that's really the key thing that they point out. I always say that, like, if you have to pick a value, sometimes you use these icebreakers. Here's the values. What's your most important value? I always say integrity, because I feel like, you can say all the other ones, but if you're not a person of integrity, you could be faking the funk, right? So that was a key thing. I really, I don't think it's a spoiler alert, but I encourage people to read that book. I tell anyone I've mentored, dozens and dozens of people over the years, I always promote that book. One of them has it and didn't return it. Don't know who you are out there. It's okay. It's okay. I'm glad you liked it. And then the other thing is, this is really interesting. It goes into the leadership styles. In that book, they talk about 4 positive leadership styles and the 2 negative ones. Now, you're probably familiar with the 2 negative ones, which are pace setting. Yeah. Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet?
And then micromanaging.
And then the micromanaging of like commanding, right? So in the pace setting, it's like they talk about how there's a time and a place for, if it's end of budget year, crunch time, there's a joint commission inspection, you've only got so many time on the clock. I mean, it is fair to not be, to be checking in routinely because you have some kind of like ticking clock that's, important. But if you're just doing that on everything, you're going to be a toxic leader. You're going to burn people out. You're going to drive people away. They always say people don't leave jobs. They leave supervisors, right? So if you're that supervisor, you're going to have a turnover problem, which means now you have a recruitment problem. The second thing is commanding. Yes, do this. Why? Because I said so. Like, see the rank on my shoulder, or you see the title under my signature block, just telling people what to do without an explanation. I'm a big Simon Sinek guy. Start with why, right? Explaining the why behind it, and then like also just mutual respect. Just because somebody works for you doesn't mean you shouldn't respect them and treat them with respect. But so many people, I think, have that image of what that, that leader on the hill with the flag behind him, George S. Patton. Like, so many people fall into that trap, and especially if they're insecure leaders, they don't want to be challenged on it. So they're not going to explain it, because if they explain it, then people might have questions about it, and then they might not be prepared to speak to it. So they'd rather just shut it down and say, just do it and walk off, right? So those are the 2 negative traits. The 4 positives, this is really interesting. Did a lunch and learn on this at the VA one time. We started a leadership collective, kind of like this podcast, but it was like a monthly thing for leaders at lunch. The 4 positives: visionary leadership. That's the way most people want to be led. It's like, Suzanne, tell me what I got to do, what resources I have to do it, why we got to get to it, when you need it by, how you want, any particulars you want, and then turn me loose to go, get out of my way and, let me go do it. And trust that I'm going to do it and hold me accountable and follow up. But that's how most people, that's like the number one preferred way people want to be led. Now, obviously, if a frontline person that maybe just started at the organization, you might not be able to do that. But especially if you're dealing with someone that's a fairly senior leader, you should be able to do that and support them. Don't just drop them in the deep end of the pool, and walk away and check back in 6 months. And then wish you had a time machine if things weren't south. I mean, check in with them. But I think that's the key thing. So people want that. But the other 4, so that's the number one preferred. The other 3 were coach mentoring. If Tanis feels like Suzanne truly has her back, is not only telling her what she needs to do and by when, but knows that she's in it together and she's going to roll up her sleeves and is in the mud with her, and truly cares about Tanis performing as a person, as a professional, as fully actualizing, as like that's the sauce. Because people like, those are the kind of leaders that people will bleed for. It's like, I would do anything for 100%. Suzanne. She's like got my back. She's always there for me. And she sees that you authentically care about the mission because she's supporting you in achieving that mission, right? And then the other 2 are democratic, like small d democratic, participatory leadership. No one of us is smarter than all of us. So, including it. And I love to do that at huddles, the Gimba. sometimes I'm pathologically participatory because I'll be, I'm not somebody that's like afraid to make a decision, but I care so much about this one that sometimes I will ask a little bit too much or keep the opportunity out there for people to weigh in a little bit too long, and I think it slows me down. The key on that one is you can overdo it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you can be like stymied.
You can be stymied in paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
And the other one that you can overdo is the fourth one, which is affiliative leadership, where people just like you. Just because you're such a sweet, nice person, you send them the card, you know all the kids' names, you do all the things like that. Now, you might not be great at your job. You might not be this. You might be a good strategist, tactician, but people just like you. I mean, they'll also believe for you just because you're so sweet and nice. But if you are so worried about being popular, then the accountability suffers, right? Mm-hmm. And so anytime you're suffering, accountability in the mission and the customers or clients or patients you're serving are suffering because you don't want to be the person to tell the person they have to show up on time to work or, be nicer to the customers. That's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting. It's a really good book, and those 4 things. And the last thing I'll say on that is in being self-aware and striving to be self-aware, anytime you have that monthly one-on-one where it's that time to just check in with your direct report, end it with that reverse review. How am I doing? So, Tanis, if I'm checking in first, the first half hour, we're going to talk about your work and how it's going and your projects and how I can support you. Any barriers I need to help get out of your way, resources. And then I'm going to hear, what do you, what are the conferences? What are the society? What are the next promotion opportunities? Who are some mentors you want me to try to connect you with? Yeah. And then at the end, I'm going to say, how am I doing? And it's your chance to rate me. And if people have that chance every month, it just normalizes it. And then if I start messing up or you have some kind of concern, it's not like tricky to handle because you're waiting for, I'm going to be able to tell Valdez when he asks me how he's doing on the 13th.
Yeah. Wow. This is so, I think this is probably one of the more comprehensive, answers to that. But I'm kind of sad that I don't have a pen and paper to take notes so I'm going to read the book. But thank you. That's really interesting, and it sounds like you have a nice balance of all of those strategies in your leadership style and in the organization. So the next thing I'd like to ask you about is, with all of these strategies in place, how do you effectively build teams that are going to synergize with your leadership style, but also move the organization forward or meet the objectives that you have?
And I want to throw in there, when you're looking at teams, you're not trying to hire the same person, right? So how do you, again, taking these different leadership approaches, look at that?
Yeah. What's your process?
So it's like a balanced team.
Yeah, I've had both sides of that. I mean, most commonly, right, we inherit teams. We come into the organization, the team is, not only is the team formed, but the culture is long formed. And leaders, if you're at the top of the org chart, you're the number one decision maker, you're the number one recruiter, you're the number one marketing officer, you're the number one ethics setter, you're the number one culture promoter, right? And so I think it can be hard, especially when you're coming in and you see a culture that maybe is of low trust or low communication or siloed. Those kind of go hand in hand. It can be then, of course, incumbent on you to try to figure out ways to build team cohesion, which is a key military thing. They always talked about that from the beginning, to team cohesion, morale, So it was one of the promotion board questions. What is the absence of too little information in the organization? It breeds resentment, stifles morale, and fosters distrust, So all those things happen. So, I always say that in building team, there's 2 things I think when you're with an existing team, any team. One, you have to have, start with why. Make sure there's a clear sense of what we're doing here. Like, why do we come to work every day? What is our mission? What is our role? What are those clear goals? What am I expecting you to do, holding accountable to? And then, of course, having standards in place to be able to do all that. It's you can have standards in place and not be setting expectations, and then you're going to have a culture of accountability, and nobody ever actually told them to do that, and you're not holding them accountable. Or you can, hold people accountable, but they've never been trained or had expectations set, and that's going to go sideways. So you really got to start, and this goes back to my lean black belt background, having a standard, training to standards. Now that you've been trained to standard and you are able to do it, an expectation is set that you will do it, and then monitoring to do it, right? But that's more on the performance side. In terms of building trust and cohesion, I think having that clear sense of mission, those clear, commonly understood goals, a shared space where people are together, even in this virtual world, even if it's I run a Tuesday, Thursday morning, 8:30 huddle that I started at the health department back when we had our Mpox outbreak back in July of 22. It was daily, and we eased it back to twice a week. But that's a place where everybody can come in, they can see each other. I do top line messaging that's, here's what's going on in the world. There's a lot of that right now. But anyone, I always say, we have little guidelines that we present on the screen and we just leave up there. Everyone is an equal in this space. We might have a batting order. You might not see your name listed as one of the report outs of HR or communications or public health. But everyone here will have a chance to speak up at the end, because if you need something, whether it's a clarifying question or whatever. So I think creating those joint spaces is important, because I think the two most important aspects, I always say, like, the two ingredients, I'll say the two most important aspects of any highly performing organization, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a sports team, whether it's a military unit, in my mind, just my opinion, leadership and communication. Because you can have all the most wonderful developed leadership and values and ideas and strategies in the world, but if you're not taking the time to communicate them out to the team, what good are they? It's like Kool-Aid that never makes it out of the packet and into the pitcher, It just stuck there concentrated, it doesn't go anywhere. And the reason I feel like that usually you see that lack of communication and that dedication to it and that behavior, it's a lack of leadership. It's either because you're a new leader and you haven't developed those muscles, or you're because you're not aware of those tactics, or maybe there's a culture of proud siloedness, and people aren't talking, and you haven't stepped in to like write that, But people don't like being kept in the treated like mushrooms, as my former boss used to say, kept in the dark and fed a lot of people don't like that. So leadership and communication are the two most important things to building culture, trust, and then modeling that way, of making sure that there's true like sense of belonging. Sometimes there's words that, certain people are not wanting to use these days, like diversity, equity, inclusion. But at the end of the day, don't we want every employee at every organization, regardless of what it is, to have a sense of belonging, that when they show up there, they feel seen, heard, empowered, welcomed, and a place that they want to come back to? So that's how I would say it for existing teams. Now, back to your point, though. One time I had a chance to build a brand new team. It was like one of those movies where the military unit where they're assembling, or the Ocean's 11, the perfect perfect mix of people. So we were starting a lean process improvement shop at the Portland VA. And I was like employee number 1, and then I got to pick employee number 2, and then her and I picked employee number 3, and then he and I picked employee number 4. Guess what happened?
You were all the same.
We were all the same. We did an exercise around Thanksgiving. I took him out to Mother's Bistro, and one of the staff ran the Strength Finders things. We'd all done
you all had the same strengths.
We were all woos, winning over others.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm a huge winning over others person, and Robert, Andrea, and Joy were all woos. Surprise, surprise, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we realized, and the problem with that is, and there's all kinds of these things, with the Myers-Briggs, and there's one with squares and squiggles and triangles and rectangles, and everyone's a different thing, and the squiggles need the triangles and all that stuff. But the thing is, like, we were all big picture, visionary, strategic thinking types. Yeah. And very much human-centered.
You needed the operations
we lacked
implementers.
The analytics. Yes. So when we had our next opportunity to hire somebody, we made it a point to prioritize developing questions that would tease out somebody's their analytical strengths, whether it was like doing data or presentation or whatever. And so we ended up hiring Krista, and then things clicked, because I'm the kind of guy that will like plan the 3-day Greenbelt training. We know where we're going to do it. We have it on the calendar. I'm promoting it far and wide. I'm championing. I'm proselytizing all across. I'm packing the seats. I've got the content. I've got the stories. I've got the guest speakers. Forgot to book the room.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that would happen. Yeah. And it happens in business too. I mean, I remember at one of these things where it was like in the executive leadership course that I did at the VA, it was like squiggles and triangles, and they talked about it in a marketing firm in Chicago or New York or someplace, probably New York, that had the greatest creative talent on board, but they were going out of business. Why? Because nobody was sending invoices to the customer.
Right. Yeah.
So you need that mix of teams. So it's definitely good. Sometimes people think about diversity. They, their mind goes to certain places, and you need all kinds of diversity. I mean, the studies show that the more diverse an organization, the higher performing it is. The more diverse a board, the better performing organization is. But you also need that diversity of personality type, mindset, and strengths.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So here you have a daughter you talked about who's getting ready to leave for college.
Yes.
So looking back in this incredible career of yours, what advice would you either give to your younger self or to her?
Oh, that's a new question. What advice would I give her? I would say, and I guess I have been already telling her this, follow your gut instincts, follow your heart. Don't overthink things. I know that might sound counterintuitive, but again, it goes back to primal leadership and that self-awareness question. In the book, it talks about, and I want to commission guys, wherever you are, 2 authors. No, I'm just kidding. In primal leadership, it talks about how when you, the need to be self-aware, to be socially aware as well, right? To know, to be able to suss out what's happening in the teams, but following your gut instinct. Because so many times, think about, and maybe it's in your own lives. Think about the jobs that you've been in that you didn't like, maybe the partners or relationships you've been in that it didn't work out so hot. Think about how maybe some of that happened. And if you ever had to like talk yourself into it in the first place, that usually can be an early indicator that maybe it's not going to be the best fit. I'll give you an example. So it talks about you're in a good job that you love, but there's this other job that pays a little bit more, it's got a better title, or you think, and you kind of have to talk yourself to go into it, your cognitive brain. That's why it's called primal leadership, because it's about emotional intelligence and leveraging your limbic system, your the lizard brain, as people call it these days, your feeling brain. So you got to, the reason that you're feeling that is it's the collective sense of your whole being kind of like doing all that work for you, 6% of your brain or something.
Yeah.
Like your body is telling you something when you're having reservations about taking this position, because you're basically trying to think your way into it. And oftentimes when you get into those jobs, they're the ones that you start looking for your next job 2 months later, or, or you just end up being in it and you don't like, or you're not thriving, you're not feeling supported. And it can happen in relationships and other aspects of all that. Maybe move to I should move to that neighborhood because it's got, the best thing. And then you get over there and you miss your old buddies. So it happens all the time. So I've been already telling Alani, follow your heart, follow your instincts, especially with the bachelor's degree. I mean, you're not going to walk out of your bachelor's degree and, into your career that you're going to do the rest of your life. Follow some, do what I did. Like when I went to PCC, I just pursued the classes that seemed the coolest. I took a lot of film classes, a lot of writing classes, mythology, U.S. history, Western Civ. I'm kind of a humanities guy. I love understanding the world and how it works and the stories behind it. And so that's what I gravitated to. And then I ended up being an English major. And then, when I went to grad school and I was kind of intimidated because I was not like a math kid, I was like, I thought I was going to maybe like fail my MBA because I was not good at math in high school. Much different story. But the thing is, when I got there, everyone was like, I wish I had an English degree because I could write, type, analyze, speak, do all the things. And some people were kind of jealous because some people had to take remedial writing for the first 3 months just to be able to string together a sentence. So I've been telling her, follow your heart, make choices, go where if your gut is telling you something that maybe that's not the right university, or this one is, or this major is what attracts you. I mean, she was looking at some majors that she thought she should be doing, but we've talked to it, and she's actually just going to go for the one that she knows that she would love, and has a better acceptance rate too, which is helpful. But the other thing I would say on that is so I was in the Army. I was a medical equipment repair tech for 8 years. I was now at the VA, and I was going back to school, and I was having to pick what's my major going to be, and I seriously almost picked an engineering degree because I figured I'm already in this field, I'm already doing it, I've got years of experience. But man, when I looked at the courses, circuits one, and, I was just like, sorry, my fellow biomeds, not for me. So I was like, I'll do the other ENG degree, the English degree. So,
I love it, the other ENG.
I am a fellow ENG degreer.
Isn't it great? Superpower.
I think it's a superpower. And spending time professionally writing sets you up for success in business, because really all of business is telling a story and understanding how people, connect to it.
And being a good leader.
And being
like you as the leader, being able to tell the stories, and whether it's coming up with metaphors or past lessons from your past.
Presenting information
presenting
in a
it,
structured way.
Getting people's buy-in, inspiring that shared vision, making it real. It takes articulation and storytelling and craft. And, on the side, I dabble in screenwriting. And I think that training of the 3-act paradigm and, drama helps me on top of that for the same reasons.
I believe it. I very much connect to what you're saying. Well, gosh, it's so fun talking. I almost don't want this to come to an end, but we are there. The last question that we ask all of our guests is iterative, and I'm so curious to hear your response. We named the podcast Hiring for Good, and we did so because we like that there's a variety of interpretations. What's yours?
Of the title?
Yeah, hiring for good. What does it mean to you?
Well, definitely love the double entendre of you're hiring a hire that's going to stick, that's going to be a part of the organization, that's going to be there for the long haul, that's not going to leave you hired right the first time. One of my oft-quoted things I say about recruiting to my team is something I heard from my manager, Michael Denny, back in like 2010, which is, it's easier to hire than fire. So hire well. And I take that to heart, and I put a lot of rigor into the selection process. And from first posting and how you and where you're posting it in the selection and how you write up the job. I mean, it starts obviously well before that first interview, right? And it doesn't end after they start on to get through the onboarding. But so yeah, when I heard hiring for good, I thought about it as you're going to make a hire that's going to be the right hire the first time, and it's going to be somebody that's there for the long haul and create that continuity and sustainability over time. But I also love the double entendre that you want to hire a good.
Yeah.
Give me a goodie.
Yeah. And good for the world,
Good for the world.
Good for the organization, good for the community.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah, giving back and, being a force multiplier for your community.
It's been really interesting asking our guests that question because some people even brought meaning to it that I don't know that we intended or had thought of. Like there were some people that are like, I view that as hiring for the good of the person that I'm hiring. Like I'm going to make their life better. It's really interesting. Just all
it
different
has been very,
ways. It's been very interesting. Like kind of fun to hear.
That's cool.
Well,
That's
just
good.
like this has been so much fun. I tell you, Valdez, your energy, your enthusiasm, thank you so, so much.
No, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's an honor to be featured as a guest. I know you have a lot of impressive speakers. I look forward to catching up on all those as well. And I'm happy to come back anytime you'd like and keep the conversation going.
Wonderful.
Well, you're definitely a big fan of Acumens, so thank you.
Appreciate Acumen very much. Thanks for the role you've played in my career.
Thanks for joining us today at Hiring for Good. If you were inspired by our conversation, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to learn more about our executive search services, check us out at www.hiringforgood.net or our company website, Acumen Executive Search.
Thanks so much, and don't forget to join us next time for another in-depth conversation about transformational leadership. Until then, have fun.